If you don't love yourself, how in the world do you give love to anyone else? That's the topic we're going to talk about today here on Self Love Monday. Building a strong foundation through self-reflection and personal growth. How you doing? This is Ron Simplified Myers, your host. And this is a very important topic because as I stated as we began, if you don't love yourself, then you don't understand love, and therefore, how can you give it to anyone else? Now, for those of you who know me, you know my definition of love is accepting a person, place, or thing just the way that it is. It's not an emotion, it's a decision. And that's why we want to talk about that here today. Now, for those of you who haven't heard from me or don't know my beliefs, I believe intimacy is what people are calling love. And intimacy is based on, I use the example of a pyramid, not a pyramid, of a iceberg, where 10% of the iceberg is above water and then 90% is below. The 10% is what you give to the world. It is just enough information in order to make a relationship work. The 90%, the intimate stuff, you share different parts of that with different people, and that's where the intimacy comes into play. And it's not necessarily just information that you're sharing, but it's experiences that you're sharing that are just between you and that particular person, which brings that intimacy there together because no one else was a part of that. So therefore, they wouldn't understand what's going on or why you feel the way you do about this person because of a particular event that you guys went through. But anyway, in the process of building a strong foundation, there's a couple of things we have to address. We have to become self-aware. We have to be authentic. We have to have self-acceptance. We have to set boundaries. We have to be resilient. And ultimately, we have to have fulfillment and happiness within ourselves. So let's cover those a little bit. Now, the self-awareness, that's just a reflection that allows you to develop a deep understanding of yourself. You examine your thoughts, your emotions, watch your behaviors, and this gives you insights that helps you build strength, the strength in places that you're strong, and maybe address some of the places that you're feeling a little weak in, and allows you to become stronger in those particular areas. You work on your values, figuring out what your values are. And when we're talking values, because normally when I talk values, I'm talking about characteristics like a person of integrity, a person of character. But in this particular case, we're talking about what do you value? And that's something we'll talk about in another podcast at a later date, where we talk about figuring out what your values are. Because there was a book that I read and I would recommend it. It's called The Value Factors. And what it basically is talking about is figuring out what your top three values are. In other words, what are the things you're going to run to if you and I are having a conversation? What topics are you going to try to push me to? If you run to the library, what section are you going to go through, etc. But the ideal is to figure out what your top three values are and live there and let everything else go in life. If it ain't in the top three, then you eliminate it from your life, and learning how to say no. And this is a part of that self-awareness. You have to become very aware of what is it that you value so that you can start that process. Now, it's going to prevail. It's going to provide a solid foundation for building towards this authentic part of you. And being authentic means be true to yourself. This is not about impressing other people. We are in a culture that unfortunately spends majority of their time trying to impress other people. Social media is programming people to believe and think a certain way. I'm not going to get into it in this particular podcast, but one of the things that's out here is telling women go chase the bag. That is such a bad conversation. And you guys wouldn't see, I'm opening up a can of worms, but that is so, you'll hear me say all the time, find a person with great character and integrity and build this together. If you chase the money, you're gonna end up in a life that you're not happy with. I'm gonna leave it there because I could go off on that particular conversation, and we can have a whole podcast just on that, and we'll get to it one day where we are going to talk specifically on that. But this is about having the authenticity, just having some self-reflection, being able to listen to your thoughts, which you guys have heard me talk about before. When thoughts pop into your head, what's going on? What's being said about you? When someone compliments you, how do you take that? We got to understand where we are. And then we got to get good at rewriting stories. And you guys have heard me talk about that before. If the stories aren't empowering you to move you towards the things you say you desire, then we have to rewrite those stories. For example, if someone says you're not beautiful, you can take that personally and put it in your brain, and then you're telling yourself that you're not beautiful, but you're basing it on someone else's opinion. This being authentic is saying I have to be able to appreciate and understand I am unique, and I am beautiful to my creator who created me. I'm created exactly the way they wanted me to be. Therefore, I am perfect. And therefore, on a scale of 1 to 10, and you guys have heard me maybe talk about this, that on a scale of 1 to 10, if 10 is perfect, then I'm perfect. I'm a 10. Folks, this is not about arrogance. This is about building towards a confidence in who you are. And you have to be authentic with yourself first to realize what are your thoughts. And you're going to realize all of the ways you feel about yourself are based on usually other people's opinions. And that's the whole thing of Self-Love Monday, is saying we got to take that back. And we got to quit letting the world program us. And we have to figure out if what you said is designed to help me move forward, I'm going to take it and run with it. If what you said is designed to destroy me, you can have it back, or I'm going to let it roll off my back. But either way, if it's not here to empower me, we let it go. And if it empowers you, take it and run. If not, again, let it go. Now, the self-acceptance, this is so key. Folks, learn to love yourself no matter what. You can look in the mirror and not be happy with the size that you are, but normally the reason you're going to say that again is because other people's opinions, because of what the world has told you what beauty looks like. You have to be able to accept yourself just the way that you are. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to start eating better, get my body in better shape. I'm doing that for health reasons. And folks, that's again why we're saying the self-reflection and becoming self-aware and that type of stuff, is because you have to be able to look at yourself and say, I love me regardless what the world says. And then I can strive to get better, but I'm doing it because I want to get better. I want to get healthy. It's not because I'm doing it for a wedding that I'm going to, or that's why I'm losing weight or something like that. Find out a real reason. And that only happens when we look at ourselves and become self-aware, and then be more authentic, as we talked about, where we're being truthful with ourselves. But at the same time, we can be truthful and say, you know what, you need to get in better shape. And at the same time say, but I love you just the way that you are. That's the self-acceptance part. We're doing this because we want to be the best us that we can possibly be. And because remember, I'm not a person that's into lying to yourself and say, you're slim, you're slim. You keep looking in the mirror and say, you're slim, because your mind is telling you you're a liar if that's not true. You got to be able to tell it something that it will believe in so that it can move forward. So you're able to tell it, we're in the process of building the best us possible. We're in the process of developing the best body possible. And that is true, and your mind can accept that. Why? Because the moment you said it, you're making that adjustment forward. It's just now we have to be consistent and continue to do it. And then the self reflection will always help us create boundaries. Boundaries are very important in your relationships with yourself and with others. There are things that you have to say, there are things that I will accept, things that I won't accept. Folks, if you don't set boundaries, you'll allow people to treat you any kind of way, which will affect the way you see yourself, which will affect the actions you take in life. You got to get good at this boundary things. And it's not, and when I'm saying set boundaries, I don't mean it's all about me. You guys have heard me say there's a difference between being selfish and self-absorbed. Selfishness is just kind of what we're talking about here on Self-Love Monday. I'm learning to love and value me. Some people will call that being selfish when you look out for yourself. If that's what they call selfish, allow selfishness to take place. For me, I'd say the difference is not being selfish, is being self-absorbed. In other words, the world revolves around you, and it's always about what you can do for me, and it's never about what you can give to others, how you can help the world. None of that ever takes place because your whole conversation is about me, 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 me. That's not ever what I'm going to talk about and what I'm about. Taking care of you does not mean I have to neglect or mistreat other people. But taking care of me means I do have to set boundaries so that I don't allow people to just treat me any way that they want to. If they're a person, when you set these boundaries, if they choose to step over those boundaries, that doesn't mean that now you step over. In other words, if they're a jerk, that doesn't mean now you become a jerk, and people will teach you that the eye for an eye, that kind of conversation. I'm not teaching that. If they're a jerk, doesn't mean you follow up, because then you can't say they're a jerk when you're doing the same thing. You just cut off that relationship if it's one that needs to be cut off, or we need to address the fact that you're crossing boundaries and we get that in check. But the only way we're ever going to have this is through this self-reflection, to be able to say, what are my boundaries? What am I willing to accept? What am I willing not to accept? We got to get good at this. Then this is going to move us into being very resilient. Once we're as we build and grow who we are, it makes us become more confident and more resilient. In other words, when challenges come at us, the more we believe in ourselves, the more we can take on things that cross our paths. And that confidence is what's going to make us overcome. And this is why I say confidence is good. There's a difference between confidence and arrogance. Confidence to me is believing in yourself. The more confidence you have in yourself, you know that you will overcome the challenges that cross your path. That is a good thing. But arrogance, which some people say you should have a little bit, I totally disagree. Because my definition of arrogance is when you put yourself kind of on a pedestal and you look down on other people. You're never going to hear me say that. You never look down on other people. Why? Because you're never better than anyone else, but no one else is ever better than you. The key is understand we all have strength, we all have weaknesses. For you to look down on another person because you're stronger in a particular area doesn't make you better than them. It just makes you stronger in that particular area. But we're in a culture that we make these decisions based on money. It's kind of like if you have money, you don't even have to have integrity and character. The world kind of looks at you as if you're a star, or if you're a person, as if you have character and integrity just because you got money. And well, I'm not going to get into that because I talk about what value men are and value women. That I think we have that whole design, whole definition all messed up. But that's something we'll get to again at a different conversation. I know I'm opening cans and people are like, no, tell me about that. But all those things are their own podcast, and we'll get into them. But the better we get at the confidence and the resilience of keep moving forward no matter what happens. Who was it? I was just listening to, was it like a TikTok or something that came across, and the guy was asking these people, he told him, he said, I'll give you $1 million. And he said, and how would that make you feel? And of course they're ecstatic, he said people couldn't make you mad, for a while there if you had that, right? And they're like, yeah. He said, what if I gave you 10 million? And they're like, oh yeah, well of course. And he said, but here's what the stipulation. Tomorrow you pass away. They're like, oh no, I don't want the money then. And he says, so if I'm understanding you correctly, then just waking up is worth more than $1 million, worth more than $10 million. And he says, so why don't you treat every day that way? Think about that, folks. Why aren't you treating every day that you wake up that way? And I feel the same way about when you look at the person in the mirror. That's you. That's the person you take into the world. Why aren't you treating that person with that kind of value, that same emotion that we're talking about? The fact that if you don't wake up, you're the person that has to wake up. So if you value living, why aren't you valuing you? You're the person who has to live out this particular journey. I used to use an example. I tell people, I said, if you wake up and you're feeling negative, or you get negative even during the day, go look at the obituary section and realize there's a whole bunch of people that would trade places with you right this moment, no matter what your issues are. Because at least they get a chance to get into the battle and fight to overcome the obstacles, the challenges, which is kind of what we're just talking about, the resilience. Folks, understand every moment is valuable, and understand you're here for a reason, and therefore you're valuable. And again, that's the main reason for Self-Love Monday, is to understand your value. And folks, as we get better at all of this, it's going to create fulfillment and happiness, because kind of like what the guy was saying, treat every, and once you wake up, treat it that way. And as I'm saying, look in the obituary section. Folks, what's the option? Think about that. What is the option? To walk around and be negative and complain and whine? And unfortunately, most people don't even recognize that's how they're living their life. All they're doing is complaining all day, every day. Folks, this is why we're talking about the self-reflection. You got to look at that and see, is that me? Am I living that way? And if so, I got to make some adjustment. Because if that's the place you live in mentally, don't be surprised that your life is out of whack. Because you're creating that with your thought process. And this is what we're talking about, how to get control of that. And again, the happiness means different things to different people. I mean, some people will tell you, yeah, once you got money, you're happy. You guys know I don't believe in that concept. I had a guy say that at one time at an event. He said, people that say money don't make you happy don't know where to shop. And my instant thought process was, if money made you happy, then why you need to shop? See, folks, think about it. The reason that you're shopping is because you're still looking. See, money will allow you the opportunity to experience different things, and you may be happy in the moment that those things take place. But don't mistake money as making you happy. Happy emotions, because happy is an emotion, those things are internal. Money is external. All the stuff we're looking at in the world, that's all external stuff. Money will help you in all your external things. Money doesn't address internal things, which means you can be a person that has all the money. Who was it? Tony Robbins was saying his last book he did, that he interviewed like 50 billionaires, and he said most of them are unhappy. Think about that. Billionaires, not with an M, people with a B, billionaires aren't happy. Folks, they got money. And some of these people have fame. They got the good looks. They got all the external stuff that the world says that make you happy. But they're not happy. Why? Because they got to do the stuff we're talking about here on Self-Love Monday. You got to learn how to accept yourself and being able to, as we're talking about, set boundaries. Listen to the conversations that you're having. Are they empowering conversations? What am I here for in terms of what can I give back to the world? Because folks, once you get the money, you're going to realize it's bigger than you. For those that keep thinking it's just about yourself, that's where a lot of these people are struggling with. It's because they went out and got the money and all the other stuff that the world told them makes you happy. Then once they got that stuff, they're not fulfilled. They feel like something's missing because it's always bigger than you. You were not put here only for you. You're put here to enjoy the journey we call life. Don't get it twisted. But you're also here to help those fulfill the exact same thing in every way that you can. So basically, in summary, what we want to do and that we're talking about here is building a strong foundation through self-reflection and personal growth. It provides that groundwork for self-awareness, being authentic, the self-acceptance, establishing healthy boundaries, developing that resilience we talked about, and then moving towards that fulfillment and happiness. It's a transformation journey that I guarantee you, if you take it in and you do kind of what we're talking about, you do these kind of exercises that we'll keep discussing through Self-Love Monday, they will empower you to a more purposeful life and a satisfying life. But you got to do the work. This is not about hoping that it's all going to change, that you're accidentally going to love yourself and do this stuff. That stuff is not going to happen accidentally, because you're in a world who's trying to program you not to believe in yourself, not to do the self-reflection, not to do the self-acceptance. Don't set boundaries. Allow other people to run your life. All the things that we're talking about here, the world is teaching you, don't listen to that stuff. Because as long as you don't take power over your life, then it allows someone else to take that power and use you for what it is they want. And as you know, that is not the objective of what we're here to teach. I'm here to teach you how to become loving the self. And then that will help us build, like we talk about on Thursday, build a solid marriage, but it'll help you build solid relationships with everyone. And most importantly, the relationship with yourself. And as you guys know, it ain't right, it ain't wrong. It is my opinion. Take the time to do the self-reflection, do the exercises that we're talking about in terms of being able to accept yourself and setting those boundaries. And let's move towards that fulfilling and happy life that we all deserve. And as you guys know, if you're not having fun, you should be doing something else. I'll talk to you guys on Thursday. Let's build solid marriages. Take care. Bye-bye.